Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to another EngageRocket Analytics Lab webcast. At EngageRocket, our mission, as you know, is to help companies to build better workplaces using people analytics. We do this by improving the employee experience using real-time analytics across three domains: helping your talent to belong, to grow, and to perform. But we all know that providing great tech and smart analytics isn't enough to move the needle on the employee experience. When we look at employee engagement across the life cycle of an employee, having a system of listening to the voice of the employees helps leaders to know what makes them tick. And we know this is important because over and over again, studies show that increasing engagement makes a significant difference to the operational metrics of the business. More engaged companies outperform the S&P 500 by 122%. More engaged teams suffer up to 59% less regrettable attrition, and even reduces the defect rate of items produced by 41%. Now, it's one thing to know this, but another thing entirely to take deliberate action to meaningfully increase engagement. And often this is where the limits of technology and software are reached, and where the potential of the human touch in management begins. So today, we are very privileged to have with us Mr. Shaun E., the Chief HR Officer at Commonwealth Capital, to share some of his experiences in taking action on the results of their engagement survey. We're going to be covering the nuts and bolts of executing an effective engagement strategy and learn more about some of the thinking that went into the way that this strategy can be designed. Now, this is always going to be different for different companies, but I'm very sure that some of Shaun's stories will resonate. And before we continue, a very quick caveat. This webcast has been designed for leaders and HR professionals who care for their people and want to find innovative ways of improving their work lives to enhance motivation and productivity. This webcast is not for you if you're a leader who's hoping for quick fix solutions or hoping for some elusive technology hack that's going to help you get more out of your people without giving anything back. These generally don't exist and run the risk of accelerated burnout or of losing the trust of your people. So with that, I'd like to invite Shaun to tell us more about yourself and Commonwealth Capital. Welcome to the show, Shaun.
Hey Chitung, thanks a lot and hello everybody. So I'm Shaun and I take care of HR for Commonwealth Capital Group. Well, I've been in Commonwealth Capital for the last 4.5 years. It's been quite a ride for us, but it's been a very rewarding and a very enriching experience as well. When I first started out in Commonwealth, well, to be honest, I was expecting myself to be getting into a big culture shock because most of my experience has been in with multinationals or even large Singapore organizations. But Commonwealth is a little bit different. Commonwealth is a collection of SMEs, small medium enterprises, put together through a series of mergers and acquisitions. Some brands we have grown from infancy stages, some brands we have actually acquired while they have been fully operational. It's been an experience because it's almost like nothing I've ever experienced before. And one of the things is, if you look at the portfolio of companies that we have, we're basically an investment company with a food portfolio. Everything about us is food. And that's why it's quite a surprise that all of us can stay in this shape actually. So we've got everything from upstream fish farming to end-to-end manufacturing to cold chain logistics to retail services. Some of the key brands that you as customers might be familiar with include brands like Pastamania, Swiss Bake, Baker and Cook, The Soup Spoon, and Others Ice Cream. We've got also the upstream farming capabilities that include our aquaculture company, Barramundi Asia, and of course its premium Kubara brand, premium Kubara Barramundi. Now, if you know, the barramundi is the national fish of Australia, so it gives us great privilege to be able to farm the barramundi in local waters. And we've got two fish farms in Singapore and one already in Australia, one coming up quite close to home. And this is really a part of the business for us that's growing and growing rapidly. Of course, let's not forget that we also have our food manufacturing capabilities, a premium halal butchery called Zack Meats, Commonwealth Culinary Creations, which is Singapore's largest artisanal central bakery today, and then of course Commonwealth Kokubu Logistics, which is really an integrated cold chain food logistics specialist. So it is with this capability that we are where we are today. Of course, we didn't really set out to do all that we've done. Much of it was really through providence. Much of it was really by chance, and we happened to be in the place at the right time, and we took that opportunity. Now, of course, well, coming together as an organization is never easy, and I think that's going to be quite an interesting part that I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit later in the webcast.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much for that very comprehensive introduction, Shaun. And I can attest to the quality of the Kubara barramundi. I've actually visited your fish farms, and they are delicious. I really I can't get enough of that. Um, as somebody who's come from maybe multinational companies and large listed companies, and moving into an outfit that's an investment company with a food portfolio, which honestly speaking is an unusual setup, and to introduce into this unusual setup of independent entities and brands and multiple outlets across 13 markets, I believe.
Mm.
How did you go about starting on this journey of employee engagement? Because this is the first time that you've done it, I believe.
Yes,
How did you go
actually,
about doing that?
indeed. The engagement survey that we did in 2018, which was last year, was the very first time we did a survey in Commonwealth. And you're right, Chitung. Before we did the survey, many people within the group haven't heard of an engagement survey. I mean, obviously, you would have people saying, "Is it going to be policed by HR? Is it going to be something that I'm going to be held accountable for? You know, and somebody's going to get into my responses and going to what I'm actually thinking about." Or you could have some leaders who could be thinking, "Look, I think I know my people best, and um, I don't think I need a survey to tell me how to gauge the pulse of my people." But it all started with purpose. Incidentally, that's one of Commonwealth's core values, the purpose. We need to know why we had to do such a thing, and it all stemmed from really pockets of feedback that we were getting um, from different parts of the organization, different businesses that we had. Um, we had people saying that, look, I think I'm not so happy with the work environment here. I'm not so happy with the benefits. I'm not so happy with my supervisors, etc. But then again, you also had people who were saying that, I'm so glad to be back at Pastamania. I'm so glad to be back at the butchery. And these were your typical boomerang cases, right? They think they leave, they think that they're going to go out there for greener pastures. And then they realize that within the next month or two, they just boomerang back into the organization. So we're getting a lot of this, and it was quite mixed signals for us, to be honest. From an HR angle, we didn't really know what to pinpoint, or where to put our finger on, and what was it that was going to make the workforce tick. So that's why we really said, look, I think we need to start this. And of course, if you look at the benefits of having an engaged workforce, I mean, it's all over research papers. You have an engaged workforce that directly correlates to your profitability of the business results go better, your customers are happier with you, and it all makes sense. So that's why for us, it was important to know exactly what we could do uh, to build that engaged workforce for the organization.
Thanks for that. And when you mentioned at the beginning, starting that purpose for why to embark on this. Was there uh, was there any how did you crystallize the agreement around why, especially within the senior management team doing this for the first time?
Mm. Well, to be honest, it wasn't a walk in the park. I wish it were, but it wasn't. So, um, there was a lot of well, obviously, as HR, we had to do our homework, right? We had to go into the background and figure out what sort of surveys we wanted to do, what sort of options there were for us. I mean, myself and some of my team members have come from multinationals. We were quite aware of what options there were. So we met up with a couple of providers and we looked at very high-end solutions, solutions that obviously would serve the need of an engagement survey, but would also perhaps maybe well, I wouldn't say cost an arm and a leg, but the price wouldn't be that price sensitive for us, you know. Uh, and then of course we went to look at free solutions. I mean, you could create a survey using a free survey tool online, and that would save enormous amounts of money. But was it something that we were able to um, get our hands on in terms of analysis, in terms of what we had to do, action planning and all that? And then of course we found something, and that was right smack in the middle of where we were looking, one right smack in the middle, and obviously that turned out to be quite the perfect solution for us. And of course, that's EngageRocket. Um, that was the background part that HR did. And then of course, with this background, I obviously had to engage management. Uh, First person I spoke to was our MD, our group MD, who's also one of the founders of Commonwealth Capital. And I shared with him the need, I shared with him the purpose of why we even started doing this. And he was aware as well. I mean, he's somebody who's very close to the ground, and that really helps me a lot. So he's close to the ground. He hears things that we hear as HR too, and he says, "Look, I fully endorse this going forward, but uh, can you be mindful of the costs that's associated with this? Can you be mindful of things to do with confidentiality?" Which was really right up our alley, because in HR everything's about confidentiality. So he said, look, that was going to be key, right? Firstly, to run a cost-efficient, cost-effective solution, but secondly, making sure that in order for us to get uh, real feedback from our employees, we had to get a tool that was confidential, that ensured confidentiality. So with his buy-in, obviously, it was maybe, I thought, 75% of the battle won. We went into the management meeting, and obviously I shared this case with the rest of the team. Um, Not surprisingly, there was obviously pushback. I mean, uh, there were leaders saying, "Look, Shaun, I think I know my people more than a survey tool knows. I've been working with my team for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I think I know them best." There were others who said that, I think we may not need this now because maybe we're not ready for it. But then there were also others who said, I think this is really good because it allows us to make data-driven decisions. Uh, we're going to be able to put our resources around uh, initiatives, interventions that actually work. And they work not because of a gut feel, they work not because somebody says, okay, I think this is going to do it, but they work because the data shows us that it's going to work. So eventually, I must have done something right. I must have said something right. They all agreed that it was necessary because um, they knew that while they could feel the pulse of the business on their own, they it was probably going to be a lot more time consuming for them to, for example, interview 100 people on the ground, right? The business leader's not going to do that. But
Mm.
neither were they prepared to say, um, put a finger on this and say, let's go with this, without having the data to back them.
Mm.
And so that was it. It was something that we managed to push through.
Mm.
I was really thankful that uh, they bought into it, and here we are today.
Yeah, and I mean that effort was a very significant one on your part to rally the whole management team in that way, Shaun, and we're very pleased that the way it turned out as well, obviously.
Yes.
um, to to understand a little bit better for those in the team that were wondering, are we ready now? Why do we need to go into this now? I mean, there are 1,001 other things happening. What was it that you think managed to swing them to decide that, okay, I think it's now rather than later.
Yep. Yep. So incidentally, well, we Commonwealth, we moved into our new facility along Bureau Lane, that's in the west part of Singapore. We moved into our new facility on New Year's Day 2016. So that marked a very significant milestone for us because that's when we amalgamated all our businesses into under a single roof. So where we had our butchery, our bakery located in different parts of Singapore, our headquarters located in another separate part of Singapore as well. That that day was significant for us because we brought everybody under one roof. But therein lay the key challenges for us as well, because when you bring everybody under one roof, it meant that we needed to engage a larger workforce and a very diverse workforce. Bear in mind that uh, the bakery, the butchery, the headquarters, the retail businesses were all operated under different business leaders. Bear in mind that they had employees from very different walks of lives, and bear in mind that they've never met anyone else. They've never met one another. I mean, the guys from the butchery would never have met the guys from the bakery, never have met the guys from the retail businesses. And so it was the work was cut out for HR, right? We needed to do something that could build and engage workforce. And it was really timely because we then set out an HR strategy to make 2017 the year of the engaged workforce for Commonwealth. We said that once we got everything settled down in 2016, right? Give us some time, and in 2017 we would have gone full on into engagement activities. So although we moved in 2016, we started to test the ground with some initiatives throughout the rest of the year. And then in 2017, we went into a full-blown engagement calendar. Of course, for the leaders who felt that we were not ready, I think the thing that moved them was how effective were HR's engagement initiatives? How effective were the things we were trying to do? I mean, we did everything from well, very simple lunch and learn talks to massages at work, to even having bring your kids to work day, to even things like bringing in external vendors and all that, and well, to sell their products and stuff like that. But they really wanted to know the ROI, the return on investment of all these activities. And actually importantly, we wanted to know as HR, we wanted to know as well. So I think this kind of we kind of then met in the middle for that one, because if you said we were not ready, but yet you still wanted to know the ROI, then there must be a way we got down to doing it. And that way was an engagement survey.
So actually, hearing that, it actually makes me appreciate a lot more the kind of gamble that HR had to take in this case, because essentially what if I might summarize what you're saying, it sounds like you almost had to put HR's reputation on the line to say that we're doing all of this stuff, and the business is almost challenging that to say that, so is it effective? And you're doubling down on the initiatives that you've launched and saying, I'm going to show you that this actually makes a difference, and this is how we can do it. And to a certain extent, I don't know whether you felt it at the time, but did you feel like you were risking a little bit of HR's reputation, uh, doubling down on the existing initiatives that you had already and saying that these do make sense for the business? And I don't know whether, and this is a kind of a part B to this question, whether there was a secondary option in your mind that if these things are really not making a difference, maybe we might need to consider like some kind of backup plan.
Yeah. So indeed, I suppose no venture, no gain. for us, and we knew we were on the cusp of history, making history in Commonwealth by being the team that launched an engagement survey. And whether the survey showed that we did right or otherwise, we knew we were going to be we knew we were going to be on the line for that, right? Um, I was prepared to do that because I deep down inside I could see value in doing this survey. Deep down inside, I knew there had to be a way to measure how effective HR's agenda was for the organization. We couldn't continue uh, building an HR plan, an HR strategy around um, a gut feel. We couldn't build it around something that we thought was going to work. We had to build it around uh, some data, some clear insights. So while while that was while that was indeed really staking us, really doubling down, and as you said, putting our reputation on the line. The backup was this: that even if the survey had showed that the stuff that we were doing weren't effective, even if the survey had showed that we 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 almost wasted all our time because our employees were still disengaged, I knew that the one thing that would come out of the survey was we would know what our key strengths would be. Definitely, because I'm sure somebody out there in the organization, some people out there in the organization would say that as an organization we were doing something right. So that would definitely come out. What would surely show up would be our opportunity areas, and that would give us a very clear direction where we were going to put our resources into. And if all else fails, what's the least that could happen, right? We would end up with our key strengths, which would turn into our EVPs, our employee value propositions. We would end up with a list of opportunity areas which we could then work on for the next year. So um, there was kind of a safety net, I felt. But of course, you're absolutely right. It was a risk that we took, and us taking it down and saying, look, we have to do this, and this was going to be the most major thing we're going to do in this year. Yeah, that was something that we were willing to do it.
Well, I admire the courage behind that decision, and I think so. I thank you for covering the decision making process in so much detail. I think that gives us a lot of understanding about what really went on behind the scenes. Once the decision was made to move forward, then it's another kind of challenge, right? Because now you're going into the field, multiple different brands, people from all walks of life, and you're trying to convince them that number one, to tell the organization or HR what they feel about the organization, and in some cases, even what they feel about their leaders. And number two, to be able to convince them that this is worth their time. And number three, to be able to convince them that they're not going to get hit with some kind of backlash or witch hunt that happens post survey. How did you go about getting that kind of broad-based buy-in across all the different brands and hundreds of people that you had to go through?
Mm. Um, Firstly, we we set ourselves we set the vision for this engagement survey, and or rather we set the tone for this engagement survey where we said, in order for this to be a success, um, the people in the organization, our employees, needed to know that they could do this survey with full assurance of confidentiality. But that was that was obviously something that we knew we had to do. But the how to get it done was really when we said it's all about communication, communication, communication. Bear in mind, again, this was the first time ever in the organization that such a survey was going to be done. And most people would probably not know about it at all. So we said, let's explore how we can go out and really communicate big on why we were doing a survey, what this survey was really all about, but more importantly, how this survey was going to help employees. So we set out getting into operations meetings with our line managers. We sought feedback from some of them to say, look, what was the best way to get to get the attention of your employees? What was the best way um, to get employees interested in doing this survey? Um, what came back was not surprising, but also very valuable for us. They said, look, if you want our workforce to be doing such a survey, and again, our workforce today, it's about 70% rank and file, and the rest of the 30% are HQ staff. So they said, if you want the majority of the workforce to be doing this survey and giving you inputs, firstly, it's got to be short. Please don't send us surveys, 60 questions, 100 questions. Nobody's going to do long surveys because nobody's going to have the time. Um, the second thing they said, look, the survey needs to be multilingual. You need to have surveys uh, that reach out to the different demographics of our workforce. We've got about 18 nationalities working in Commonwealth. So we needed a tool that would be able to support that language ability. But finally, again, it the managers echoed that you need to make sure that the tool is confidential. It cannot be a tool where our staff look at it and say, I'm going to be marked down for this. So with that in mind, we set out and we went on to the communication strategy, assuring everybody that obviously it was the survey was going to be run by a third party. HR's only involvement was to set the survey in motion, and of course communicate what the survey was going to be doing and the results, etc. But everything else was going to be done by EngageRocket. So that really reassured a lot of our employees, and I think that's why uh, we actually got a 97% participation rate for the survey. Extremely surprising for us. I mean, we set ourselves a very stretched target of let's hit 90%, right? If we can even get 9 out of 10 people to respond to the survey, look, Shaun, let's go for a meal, let's go for a beer or something, right? Seriously, we weren't expecting anything. I don't know. I don't think we were even expecting like 7 out of 70% of them. But so when we hit 97%, it was awesome. It was really awesome. And a lot of a lot of this has to do with my team who really coached and engaged our employees to participate in the survey. Um, the key message was, guys, this is that one chance, for you to be able to share with uh, the leadership team, HR, your immediate managers, how you feel about the organization, how you feel about where they're taking the organization to. And if things like your work environment matters to you, if things like your relationships at work, your rewards, your recognition matter to you, then this would be the best opportunity to do it. Not that we don't do face-to-face catch-ups or chit-chats, we do, but this was that one opportunity that they could do it in the comfort of their own space, with again the comfort of knowing everything they say will be completely confidential.
I think that's a really great point. And having seen many of these programs run in the field before, you sometimes get business partners who badger the BU heads and the line leaders to, hey, don't take your survey, things like that. What you've just described is the complete opposite of that. It's like highlighting the opportunity to the employees, and this is why you need to go about participating in this. And 97%, I mean, it's amazing that such a positive approach was able to get that much groundswell of feedback, and I really applaud you guys for doing that. So so once the survey was done, and you've gotten 97 out of 100 people telling you what they thought in Commonwealth. Um, what were some of the key insights that you found that were generated from the analysis?
Mm. So um, we were we were obviously able to identify what our key strengths were, um, and I will say that it kind of surprised us in a way, and I'll come to that in a while. But obviously, on the other hand, we were able to tell what our key opportunity areas were. Our I think we got an overall engagement score of about on an average about 70%. That was firstly that was surprising to us. I mean that meant that 7 out of 10 people in Commonwealth Capital are happy working here. So remember earlier in the conversation where we mentioned that there were pockets of feedback coming in, and we don't know whether it was the vocal majority or was it really just the vocal minority that was speaking. The survey actually showed that, well, the feedback was there, it was clear, and yet 7 out of 10 people in Commonwealth are still happy working here. So that result really surprised us. Actually, I was really surprised. So we then deep dived into what were they happy about, and really our top two drivers uh, were clear expectations and relationships at work. So our employees were telling us that working at Commonwealth Capital means that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They know exactly how their work relates to the success of the organization. And that's fantastic because you don't need very much to be convincing these guys why you need to put in the extra mile, why you need to be putting in the extra minute or an extra hour just to get the work done if needed. So it was fantastic for us, and that was something that we were very reassured by. The other thing that stood out for us as a clear strength was relationships at work, and this meant that our employees felt that at work they felt that they were not working with colleagues but rather working with friends, people who could even feel like family to them. um, this was important to us because it meant that the relationships that our leaders were building on the ground, that uh, that the teams and on our rank and file in our ground teams, the relationships that they were building were very strong. And perhaps this was the explanation why the boomerangs felt so good when they came back, because having gone away, they felt that they were leaving a bunch of friends, and then coming back, they were returning to family again. So these were clear strengths for us, which today we have set out using both of them as our EVPs. We're setting up stuff in HR, centering around both of these two strengths, really playing on our strengths, uh, so that we get to attract or obviously retain the best talent that we have. Um, Obviously, there was the other side of opportunity areas where the top two were reward and recognition. Now, having had the experience of being in surveys before, reward wasn't that much of a surprise for me. In fact, I'm sure if I asked anybody, put up your hand if you know if you think that you're paid enough, or you think that you're very well paid. I don't think anybody's hand is going to go up, right? So obviously, reward was something, but not to discount the insight. We knew we had to get our arms around reward and to do something that addressed the reward factor. So I'll come to that in a while. But the other opportunity area was recognition. So employees were telling us that, well, I don't feel that I'm recognized, or I didn't get recognized by my supervisor in the last 1 week or the last 1 month, and that was telling for us because recognition was firstly in our minds quite an easy fix, but yet why wasn't it done in our teams? Because if it's so easy, then was it something that we were lacking in HR, or was it something that they were they were looking to us to provide? So if we look at our two opportunity areas, it kind of gels in together. I mean, it kind of dovetails with each other quite nicely. And we realized that actually, if you look at reward, the first thing that came to our minds was, were we about to go out and increase everybody's salaries by 10% overnight? The answer was obviously not, because it's not sustainable for any business, right? So we asked ourselves, would it then be the communication of the rewards package? And we obviously work on a total rewards kind of arrangement. So we were obviously quite aware that maybe it's communication, because today, or rather back then, we had we didn't have a holistic representation of our total rewards. And so you could have, for example, an employee telling us, okay, look, I'm walking next door, joining the competitor next door, just maybe for $100 or $200. And we would be, okay, but why would you do that? Because, it's $100, $200 more, and that's going to help me a lot. And then when he went over there, within 2 months, he boomeranged back, and we asked him, so what didn't work out for him? He said, well, I went over there for $100 more, but they made me work 12 hours a day with no breaks and all that. And that's not what I want, because family time is important to me, and I want to be spending more time with my family. So that didn't work out, and then I'm back. So we realized that actually something like as simple as a reward statement would have addressed all of that. Something as simple as a reward statement would help our line managers retain their people better. And that's something that we have worked on already since then. For recognition, it was clearly a very simple task for us, because what we just needed to do was to coach our managers on how to deliver recognition. Now, I say it's simple for us because we're the ones telling them what to do. But again, if you look at the managers, and the context being these people may not be exactly the most comfortable with giving recognition, they would be feeling a little bit awkward. So we've done a series of workshops since then, just so that giving them bite-sized tips on how to recognize an employee, uh, from as simple as a pat on the back saying well done for the job today, to a slightly more complex, like writing them notes, or giving them good written recognition and feedback. Um, our managers are now trying them all out, and we're seeing a lot of it coming out in our operations teams. We're seeing a lot of it in the office as well, that um, people are not afraid to recognize anymore. Um, Taking the lead, I mean, HR, we start off every one of our team meetings with a recognition round the table. I mean, if we do these meetings once a month, there's got to be something in that last 1 month that you can recognize your teammate about. So it's these tangible insights that the engagement survey has been able to provide for us. It's these um, real time insights that we wanted, and we really got from the engagement tool, and that was really important for us.
Thanks, Shaun. I must say that I'm very heartened to hear that the response to the recognition challenge that you guys had was not to go out there and hold like a bunch of employee of the month type awards, and you guys really got down to the nuts and bolts of the practice of recognition and building a culture of recognition within the teams, specifically by equipping your line managers, because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? And I think that's the very enlightened way to approach this. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on the reward statement that you mentioned? It sounds really interesting, but could you elaborate on what that was?
Yeah. So typically, as an employee, previously we would be, well, just simply issued. I mean, when you rejoin an organization, we would just simply be issued a letter of appointment that talks about your terms of employment and stuff like that. And typically, in most cases, the HR guy just simply says, whatever else you need to know, just refer to the HR policy manual, days, number of days leave, or whatsoever, right? We felt we needed to take one step further. We felt we needed to articulate exactly what benefits each employee is getting. And these are very individual statements, right? Very individual to an employee. I mean, a guy who's getting a transport allowance today, it's different from another guy who's not getting. But another guy who's getting maybe a cold room allowance just because he works in a cold room, some other guy is not getting it as well. So we knew we needed to make these statements very personalized. And it's not about loading employees with letters after letters after letters, which ser- most times, they just take the letter, they read it once, and they put it aside, and they may never remember it again. It was all about making a reward statement attractive enough so that they knew at one glance what they had. If it was everything from their base salaries to leave entitlements to rewards in terms of bonuses, even to things like discounts at our restaurants. These were things that they needed to know. It was even down to things like getting them to realize that, look, uh, having the time to be able to spend with your family because you were on for example, an 8-hour work shift or something. That was something that we needed to put in because again, we are working with a group of employees who value the bread and butter issues, who value um, the ability to put food on the table, and these were things that they needed to know right up front. It was not about an airy fairy concept. It was not about going to some high level presentation and then sharing with them stuff like that. They would not be able to register that and remember that. So key to us was making sure that the reward statement was something they were able to was able to articulate, number one, what the benefits were, but number two, relate to the employees who were receiving these benefit statements. So this is something that we've been putting in place since then. Um, it's been quite well received, I must say, because today uh, our employees are really quite well aware of what they're getting in. I think they're quite happy.
And that's a great point. It's such a great story. Being able to use essentially cutting edge behavioral economics and psychology to nudge the motivation of staff specifically in this very sticky space of rewards, right? And it's what I love about this is that it's such a sophisticated and simple and elegant approach uh, to helping to improve the motivation just by improving the transparency of the rewards process. Um, you touched on a little bit about the tracking or getting some early feedback about this. How are you going about, I guess, more formally tracking the effectiveness of some of these programs? Because they sound great.
Mm. So uh, on an informal side where we're getting a lot of feedback because we go for operations meetings, we go for chit chats. We as HR we interact quite frequently with our line leaders, even our line staff. But obviously, the more formal approach will be a follow up engagement survey, and that's really coming up in the next couple of months for us because we really want to know that with all the action plans that we've put in place to address the reward, to address the recognition, to emphasize the importance of relationships at work, and obviously to to get that clear expectations up there with everybody. We want to be able to see how have all our action plans actually how have they been effective for our employees, and that's why a follow-up survey for us is a must. And I would say it's not good enough just to do one survey because that tells you the pulse, that tells you what that gives you a snapshot of your employees' sentiments at that point. It's important to do the follow-up. And actually, if you ask me, the follow-up is more important than the first survey because the follow-up tells you if you're headed in the right direction. And so that follow-up survey is something that we're pushing out really soon. Um, I'm actually quite excited to see the results when they come out. Um, Again, maybe staking my reputation on the ground again. We have got some businesses who are challenging their employees to say, um, look, we're intending to see a 15% increase to the last result. And then when I hear that in HR, I'm like, oh gosh, are you serious? But I think that's testament to the belief that the business leaders have in this tool because now they're talking in numbers, now they're talking in percentages. Previously, they were saying, I don't want, let's try to minimize that kind of feedback. Let's try to minimize that kind of sentiments. But how? But why? And how do you measure that minimize or that reduction? Right? You you almost needed something like a tool to tell you, let's see a 15% increase, let's see a 5% increase, and that's something that we're going to be doing in the next couple of months.
That's great. It sounds very much like what you've started with this is to almost inculcate a cultural change within the people and the management, thinking about the uh, people issues in a more data-driven way, but then also in the same vein, taking a greater interest in in how people are being treated and how they're motivated. And that's such a great story. And if you were in a position to share perhaps one nugget of advice on other companies who are thinking about measuring their employee engagement and embarking on a similar journey,
Mm.
what would you how would you say about how they should think about doing this?
Mm. The first thing they the first thing they should do is to know the purpose, why they want to do this. If it's purely for a KPI, a key performance indicator that they want to put out in a scorecard, or if it's just simply because it's the in thing, and I also need to get into this whole engagement survey kind of thing, then I would say maybe that's not it. But if the purpose is really to know their people, um, to know how they can impact their people with positive interventions, with um, with the initiatives that arise from the action planning, um, then that's a great purpose to be doing it. If the purpose is to want to make things better for employees so that they make it better for your customers, and then obviously your customers make it better for your business, then they should do it, because that's that one way that they're going to do that they're going to be able to gain these insights. The other thing I would say is, once you've got over that whole purpose thing, be prepared to see it through. Be prepared. Have the courage, have the guts to really push it through, because you're gonna face a lot of resistance. I mean, people are gonna come back with the same kind of stuff that I was faced with. There are leaders who are gonna say that no, I don't need it. I know my people better, or people are gonna say, look, I don't think we're ready for this. But if you believe that this is going to be something that works, start engaging your leaders early. Start engaging them with examples of why this is going to help your business. Start engaging them on how an engaged workforce is going to help your business grow, and grow a lot bigger. Because as an HR person, what's most important is how we relate to the business. It's not so much of how the business relates to us, because the business has got its own priorities. We got to be able to relate to them, put it out there in a way that they understand why it makes sense for them. And I think that's really important. Um, I think the last thing I would say is, after we're pushing this whole thing through, the key thing really is communication. If you get your communication strategy right, it's it's almost a straight road to success, because what employees really want is to know and to understand why they need to do such a thing, or what this whole thing is about. If we do it and we don't communicate, and it's just something that HR is rolling out and nobody knows about it, then you're going to see that there's not much return on the investment. There's not much, the effectiveness of the tool just simply isn't there, because your employees don't buy into it. So these are the three things I think.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that, and for your sharing so generously the experience that you went through being able to make this a success at Commonwealth Capital, Shaun. During this time, just to do a quick recap, we started out focusing on the why of why would you even want to begin running an employee engagement survey, and then or even applying an analytical approach to your people. And then from there, you described how we moved on to the strategy, the engagement strategy with your senior leaders, building out a process for how you're going to be able to effect this kind of culture change. And then you talked also about the execution, and how you guys avoided some of the very common pitfalls that come with this. For example, tying it immediately to manager KPIs, forcing down participation on the line. I think you guys steered clear of all of these common pitfalls and executed excellently. And then finally, it all boils down to, as you said, like people and communications, like keeping that continuous flow of information. Once you get that analysis in real time, to be able to feedback that communications as quickly as possible to the line, so that they know that their voice has been heard. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. and for taking the time to be with us here today. Over the next 5 minutes or so, if I can just ask for your time to stay live on chat in case there are any questions that might be coming from our viewers, and then we'll be able to respond to them on chat together. So for those of you who are viewing this right now, now's the chance that you can ask Shaun any questions that you might have about the execution, about some of the thoughts, about elaborating on some of that. He'll be able to share as much as he can in such a public forum. And obviously, if you'd like to take that conversation further, I hope you'll be able to just write into us, and EngageRocket will filter those questions over to Shaun and connect you guys up. Also, if you have any questions for me or EngageRocket, obviously do write them in the chat as well. Thank you so much, all of you watching, for your time this afternoon, and thanks once again so much. It's been an honor having you on the show, Shaun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chitung.
Take care.
It's been an honor, actually. Take care.
Bye-bye.